So we were going to talk about the tiara.
Go away.
Yeah.
I thought I'd said no.
I know, but I just think it would look so fabulous if you
Yeah,
did.
but I've only got little tiny tiaras. They're not really worth it.
That crown isn't yours to claim echoes through marble halls as Princess Anne slams the lid on Queen Elizabeth's tiara, cutting Camilla's power grab dead in its tracks. Imagine the hush that follows when the family's fiercest protector stands her ground unwavering, fearless, and armed with her mother's final wishes. In the next 40 seconds, you'll witness the secret showdown behind palace doors, the moment Anne risked royal wrath to safeguard Catherine's destiny, and the explosive ripple that followed from London to your screen. Get ready for a scandal that redefines loyalty, legacy, and the true weight of a crown. Smash that subscribe button and ring the bell now, because you're about to step inside the palace's most explosive secret. Hit like if you believe tradition matters, and drop your boldest take in the comments should Anne have dared to defy a queen. Stay with us. This battle for a tiara will change everything you thought you knew about royal loyalty. 3 months ago, Westminster Abbey glowed under a canopy of gold and stained glass. The world watched as Charles III and Camilla processed down the aisle, his crimson robes trailing like a comet's tail, her crown set atop her head with ceremonial precision. But amid the pageantry, something was missing. Not one princess sparkled with a tiara. Every headpiece had been quietly removed, replaced by wreaths of flowers or sleek, unadorned coiffures. A break with centuries of tradition so subtle that most viewers didn't notice. But to insiders, it screamed of control. Behind the scenes, courtiers whispered about Camilla's post-coronation decree: no princess may ever don a royal tiara again. Framed as a modernizing reform, it aligned with King Charles's vision of a streamlined monarchy and feather-light carbon footprints. Yet close aides suspected darker motives, a bid to ensure every glittering gem reflected only her new authority. Imagine the sting for Catherine, the Princess of Wales, who once lit red carpets with the lover's knot and diamond scroll tiaras that linked her to Diana's legend. And for Anne, the Queen's oldest daughter, whose signature aquamarine and pearl tiara had become as much a part of her identity as her equestrian jackets. Tiaras aren't mere ornaments, they are living history. Each sapphire diamond and platinum curve carries the imprints of coronations past Elizabeth's jubilant crowning in 1953. Diana's poetic elegance even whispers of Victoria's firm reign. To ban them was to erase chapters from the family's story. For Catherine, it felt like a denial of her place in that lineage, and for Anne, a betrayal of her mother's final wishes. In the weeks that followed, the ban spread beyond Westminster. At state banquets, foreign dignitaries noted the absence of tiaras. Gala invitations arrived with no headpieces stamped in formal print. At charity balls, the palace's grand ballroom shimmered with evening gowns, but heads remained bare. Some guests complied out of loyalty. Others obeyed out of fear that refusing would mark them as disloyal to the queen consort. Meanwhile, in her private apartments, Princess Anne felt the walls closing in. Once the model of steadfast duty, she found herself pacing marble corridors, at dawn replaying every family conversation etched into her memory. She remembered her mother's gentle reminder: "These jewels belong to the future Anne. Guard them well." Her pulse quickened as she realized those words were now at risk of being trampled by ambition. Across the Thames at Kensington Palace, Catherine maintained a composed public face, soft smiles, gracious waves, but in the quiet of her sitting room, she pressed her fingertips to the cool glass of her engagement ring, eyes clouded with unspoken frustration. She had devoted herself to charitable causes, to raising her 3 young children, to being the unifying force the monarchy needed. Yet the ban on tiaras felt like a rebuke, a reminder that no matter her contributions, her sparkle could be dimmed at a whim. Word of Marie Claire's exclusive spread leaked Catherine Fine's new ways to shine without jewels. It read a backhanded compliment that stung like a slap. Social media influencers weighed in. Some sympathized with Catherine's restraint, others celebrated the palace's shift toward simplicity. But Anne saw a different picture: a sister silenced, a legacy endangered, and a family tradition teetering on the edge of erasure. By midsummer, the tension had reached fever pitch. The palace garden parties buzzed with speculation. Would Anne remain silent? Could Catherine ever reclaim her rightful adornments? And most urgent of all, what exactly did Queen Elizabeth intend when she entrusted that iconic crown to her daughter and granddaughter? One late evening, under the hush of gaslight chandeliers, Anne summoned her closest aides for a confidential meeting in the picture gallery. Portraits of Elizabeth the Mercer and Victoria stared down their jeweled crowns, gleaming in the flicker of candlelight. Anne's voice was low but unshakable. We cannot allow a blanket ban to rewrite her will. In that moment, the stage was set for a confrontation that would echo through palace halls and beyond, a battle of tradition versus modernity, of loyalty versus ambition, all fought over the gleam of a single crown. The first whispers began in hushed corridors, soft footfalls on ancient flagstones, trailing voices that stopped when Anne entered the doorway. It was midsummer, yet the atmosphere felt ice cold. Camilla's decree had slipped into every royal calendar: no tiaras at any event. A stray memo ordered headpiece-free formality at charity galas, state dinners, even private family gatherings. Protocol officers scrambled to rewrite dress codes. The subtle shift rippled outward like a silent alarm. Something precious was at stake. At Clarence House, Camilla's private secretary fine-tuned guest lists for a diplomatic reception. She tapped a finger against her lips, considering each name. Princess Beatrice's borrowed Cartier diadem crossed out. Eugenie's emerald fringe shelved. Even minor royals rehearsed coiffures without sparkle. The message was clear: no one could outshine the Queen. But for Catherine and Anne, it felt like exile from the story itself. In Kensington Palace's drawing room, Catherine greeted well-wishers with that familiar gracious smile. Yet behind her eyes, a storm raged. As she poured Earl Grey for a visiting ambassador, her hands trembled ever so slightly. The ambassador complimented her fresh new look, referencing the absence of jewels as avant-garde. The words cut deeper than any blade. Each polite nod felt like a reminder that her legacy had been clipped. Word of Catherine's silent protest reached Anne through palace grapevines. That night, unable to sleep, Anne walked the empty gallery, lit only by moonlight and portrait lamps. Each painting, a Queen Elizabeth in her glittering coronation robes, a young Diana with lover's knot perched atop soft curls, seemed to glare at her. The hush pressed in until her heart pounded like a drum. This invasion of tradition won't stand, she vowed. Back at Buckingham, Camilla held court in the grand ballroom. Court photographers captured the sleek modernity gowns flowing to the marble floor, bare heads drawing focus to Camilla's own coronation diadem. She moved through the crowd like a conductor, each curtsy reinforcing her primacy. When a photographer asked, "Is this the new royal minimalism?" she smiled serenely. "We honor the people by stripping away excess," she said. But behind that calm, insiders heard a sharper edge, and ensuring no rival light dims my own. Meanwhile, in private family channels, Charles III found himself marshalling diplomacy. At a closed-door meeting in the palace's private apartments, he listened as advisors presented conflicting briefs. Some saw the ban as a bold step toward a modern monarchy. Others warned it risked fracturing family unity. Charles closed his eyes, pinched the bridge of his nose, and realized he faced a choice between public reform and private loyalty. As summer bled into autumn, the ban's true cost became impossible to ignore. At the annual Order of the Garter service, no princess wore her ancestral gems. Cameras lingered on the empty crowns beside Catherine's floral circlet, Anne's austere bun, and Beatrice's jeweled choker, repurposed from a tiara's band. Across the globe, news outlets ran graphics spotlighting the missing royal glitter. Memes popped up photos of tiaras photoshopped onto scarecrows in palace gardens. The world took notice, and the palace felt the glare. In the midst of this maelstrom, Anne convened her inner circle in the gallery annex. The aides sat around a carved oak table, anxiety taut in the air. Catherine attended via secure video feed from Kensington. Anne spoke with measured intensity. "They've stolen more than jewelry, they've stolen our stories." She gently placed a leather-bound volume on the table, Queen Elizabeth's codicil in her own hand, specifying that particular tiara must pass directly to Catherine upon its queenly coronation. The aides exchanged looks. Even the most loyal to Camilla gasped at the document's clarity. Simultaneously, Catherine wrestled with her own strategy. In the palace nursery, she cradled Prince George as he drifted to sleep. Charlotte and Louis played quietly nearby. Images of her children wearing miniature crowns in holiday cards, now all but impossible under the ban, haunted her. She pressed a soft kiss to George's forehead, vowed to restore their birthright. Her thoughts raced, I'm not just fighting for myself, but for their inheritance of history. Physical tension coiled in her chest like a tightened spring. Word of Anne's gathering reached Camilla through palace networks. That afternoon, Camilla retreated to her private study, closed the ornate door, and dialed a close confidant. Her voice remained composed, but every sentence carried an undertow of steel. Anne's mobilized, she said quietly. She has her mother's papers. I don't intend to lose this quietly. She leaned back, considering her options. The queen consort had never faced an opponent like this, a sister who could match protocol with personal conviction. Behind the palace walls, courtiers picked sides. Some pledged loyalty to Camilla's new vision. Others quietly slipped notes to Anne's camp, offering support when the moment of truth arrived. Subtle tactics emerged, small preview teasers in friendly interviews, stories in royal-approved publications praising Anne's dedication to duty. Each whisper built pressure, like the tightening threads of a drawn bow. As All Souls' Night approached, a private dinner was scheduled at Clarence House, an elegant affair to honor foreign envoys. Guests received strict instructions, no headpiece of any kind. Yet, in the courtyard afterwards, Anne appeared alone beneath a single gas lamp. She wore a discreet emerald pin, the only hint of ornamentation. A palace aide joined her voice low. Camilla will ask for your presence after dessert. Anne's jaw set. She nodded, knowing the showdown loomed. Inside the dining room, Camilla presided at the head of the table. The wax candles cast flickering shadows across her jeweled neckpiece. When the last course was cleared, Camilla raised a crystal flute. To evolution, she toasted, and to a monarchy that reflects our times. The guests echoed, "Hear, hear." Anne rose next, her posture, perfect voice, soft but unwavering. To legacy she counter-toasted, and to the promises of those who came before. Muffled gasps rippled as eyes darted between them. The unspoken challenge hung heavier than any crown. Later in the hush of the adjacent drawing room, Camilla confronted Anne one-on-one. Servants discreetly departed. Camilla's voice was low. You're playing a dangerous game, Anne. Anne's gaze didn't waver. She unclipped her emerald pin and set it on a marble pedestal. I am honoring my mother's word, she replied. Her will is our guide. Without it, we betray everything she stood for. The tremor in Camilla's smile revealed the impact. The queen consort realized Anne would not relent. As guests dispersed into the crisp night air, the palace staff whispered of a detente, a tacit rollback of the ban. By dawn, a formal bulletin rescinded the no tiara rule. Royal jewelers began discreetly preparing tiaras for upcoming engagements. Palace communications drafted a statement praising both women, Camilla's commitment to modernization, and Anne's devotion to tradition. The narrative was spun as unity restored, but those in the know understood the true victor. In mere weeks, courtiers noticed Catherine slipping the lover's knot onto her head once more at a private portrait session. The sparkle reclaimed its rightful place. Anne watched from the gallery's archway, a single satisfied breath escaping her. The conflict had escalated from whispered directives to a private showdown and ended with the preservation of a legacy. Yet beneath the surface, the family knew this was not the last chapter. The war for tradition and power had intensified, and the crown's glitter would continue to guide every move in the corridors of history. By the glow of a single candelabrum in the Queen's picture gallery, everything changed. Princess Anne had spent sleepless nights studying the tiny loops of script in her mother's final codicil. Queen Elizabeth's own handwriting dictating that a certain tiara be reserved for Catherine alone. That forbidden document sat open on a lacquered table, its edges worn by decades of handling. Anne's pulse hammered against the marble floor as she traced each line with a slender finger, feeling the weight of history settle on her shoulders. In that moment, she made a decision that would rewrite royal protocol. No longer content with private protests and whispered briefings, Anne resolved to confront Camilla directly, and on her own terms. She would not storm the throne room or raise her voice in public. Instead, she would deploy the oldest weapon in the monarchy's arsenal, unassailable tradition, backed by irrefutable precedent. Her plan formed with brutal clarity. First, she would secure the codicil itself, transferring the original from the crown jewels vault to Catherine's private safe under the watchful eyes of 2 trusted curators. Every fingerprint, every wax seal would be authenticated and recorded. Then she would summon representatives from each branch of the family, Charles William, and even Camilla, under the pretext of a ceremonial reading of Elizabeth's posthumous will. By framing it as a solemn duty rather than a tactical move, Anne ensured no one could accuse her of personal ambition. Next, Anne would leverage the palace's own media machinery. Carefully curated photographs of the gathering would leak to a select group of royal correspondents, images of the tiara resting atop the open will of Catherine's poised hand, hovering protectively over it. The headlines would read, Elizabeth's own words. Confirm Catherine's crown. The public already keyed into the tiara saga would swell behind her cause. Camilla would find herself isolated, forced to choose between honoring a beloved queen's legacy or appearing petty. But Anne didn't stop there. Recognizing Camilla's predilection for framing her reforms as modernization, Anne devised a 2-pronged countermeasure. In parallel with the will's reading, she would propose a new initiative, the Heritage Heirloom Project, overseen by Catherine's charity arm. This program would digitize every royal jewel's provenance and make high-resolution images accessible for future generations, an undeniable nod to transparency and sustainability. By putting innovation in Catherine's name, Anne not only reclaimed the tiara, but also co-opted Camilla's narrative of progress. Anne spent days composing her message. She imagined the hushed gasps of aides as she revealed Elizabeth's directives. She pictured Charles's conflicted glance, knowing he must uphold his sister's duty. She rehearsed her own posture, shoulders, squared chin, lifted so that when cameras clicked, she would look every bit the guardian of tradition. On the morning of the Grand Assembly, she walked the gallery in a tailored navy suit, her steps echoing against polished floors. Courtiers slipped into formation, William in a crisp morning coat, Catherine radiant yet composed, Camilla poised in a pale silvery gray ensemble. Anne sensed the tension coil in the air like a drawn bow, ready to release its arrow. Thank you all for gathering, Anne began, her voice steady as she lifted the codicil. Her Majesty left clear instructions regarding her personal collection. In her own hand, she specified the tiara you see before us, for Catherine when she becomes queen. She laid the document flat, then draped the tiara's cushion alongside it. The room held its breath. Camilla's eyes flickered toward Catherine, whose expression softened into a gracious nod. Charles cleared his throat, stepping forward to affirm his sister's reading. As king, he acknowledge and will uphold our late mother's wishes. His words carried the weight of the crown. A hush fell, protocol locked in place. With that, Anne unveiled the Heritage Heirloom Project, outlining Catherine's plan to digitize and preserve the royal jewels' stories. The murmurs of approval rippled outward. Journalists scribbled notes frantically. Cameras flashed, capturing Anne's triumphant half-smile and Catherine's grateful glance. In those few minutes, power shifted. Camilla, faced with both precedent and public momentum, offered a courteous but resigned bow. She pledged to support the project, her tone measured, betraying the defeat of her private edict without a single raised voice. The triumph was complete. Anne's revenge had been exacted not with scandal or spectacle, but with unassailable proof and strategic brilliance. She had honored her mother, protected her niece's future, and reasserted tradition in a monarchy racing toward modernity. As the assembly dispersed into hushed conversations and off-the-record applause, Anne allowed herself a quiet breath of relief. The Tiara War was over, and Catherine's crown, along with the legacy of Queen Elizabeth, was safe at last. The moment the codicil and tiara were formally displayed, the palace gates felt electrified. Word spread within minutes. Anne had invoked the late Queen's own handwriting to reclaim a jewel and the family's future. But Anne's real coup was only beginning. First, she arranged for the official photographs to be taken in the picture gallery itself. Under the watchful eye of the Crown's head curator, a single sunbeam filtered through a high window, illuminating the silver and diamond tiara, perched upon a crimson velvet cushion. Behind it, Elizabeth's codicil, lay open the Queen's spidery script, clear and unambiguous. No portraitist's brush could have captured a more potent image of legitimate authority. Newswire photographers, handpicked for their reliability, were silently ushered in. Their lenses clicked in rapid succession, yet the hush in that grand room was almost deafening. Within the hour, the Palace Communications Office released a brief statement. Pursuant to the late Queen's expressed wishes, the St. Edward's lace tiara is reserved for Catherine, Princess of Wales, upon her accession. We honor Her Majesty's foresight and preserve this heirloom for the future. This press release landed like a thunderbolt across the global news cycle. Headlines around the world splashed phrases such as Elizabeth's final word and Anne's bold move in bold type, ensuring no one could mistake the significance of the act. Next, Anne orchestrated an exclusive sit-down with a handful of respected royal correspondents in the palace's Georgian drawing room. As cameras rolled for a recorded interview, she spoke with quiet resolve. Tradition is not antiquated. It's the bedrock of our institution. My mother entrusted these jewels to secure our continuity, and I will not allow caprice to rewrite her legacy. She chose her words carefully, every syllable underscored by the gravity of her role as Queen's daughter. When a correspondent asked whether this was a personal vendetta against Camilla, Anne's gaze remained steady. This is not about individuals, it's about duty. Meanwhile, Catherine took her own steps forward. That afternoon, she appeared at a children's reading event in Wales, carefully selecting the Lover's Knot tiara from her private collection, a subtle yet powerful assertion that the ban had been lifted. Photographers captured her as she bent to read a story to wide-eyed 8-year-olds, the tiara's sapphires shimmering with each gesture. Social media outlets exploded Catherine's crown returns, thundered across feeds. Fans posted side-by-side photos of Catherine pre-ban and post-reclamation, the contrast impossible to ignore. Behind the scenes, Anne leveraged the palace's internal channels to ensure the ban could not quietly reappear. She convened a meeting of senior courtiers and the Lord Chamberlain, presenting the codicil and soliciting formal adoption of an updated protocol manual. Article 27 would now specify that any decree affecting heirlooms must reference the Queen's last will. The room fell silent as Anne read the passage aloud. Even the most conservative aides felt the weight of her conviction. Within hours, the new protocol was stamped into effect, an irreversible bulwark protecting Catherine's right. Camilla, aware that public sentiment had shifted irrefutably, attempted one last move. She requested a private audience with Anne in the royal library, hoping to negotiate a face-saving compromise. Sources say she offered to host an exhibition of Queen Elizabeth's jewels under her patronage, positioning herself as guardian of the entire collection. But Anne, standing tall amid rows of leather-bound volumes, responded simply, "Guardianship is not a bargaining chip." Camilla's smile faltered, and the conference ended with a courteous but firm parting. To cement her victory, Anne announced the Heritage Heirloom Project, spearheaded by Catherine's charity. In a live-streamed event hosted by the Princess, high-resolution scans of every royal tiara, diadem, and circlet were unveiled online, complete with interactive stories of their origins, from Queen Victoria's sapphire wreath to Elizabeth's pearl fringe. The project was hailed as a triumph of transparency, respect, and innovation. Critics who had once lauded Camilla's minimalism found themselves praising Catherine's forward-thinking approach, unable to deny the elegance of honoring history through technology. Days later, at a state banquet in Edinburgh, Catherine appeared once more in the St. Edward's lace tiara. The hall erupted in applause when she rose to deliver a toast, her words echoing under vaulted ceilings. May we remember that our greatest jewels are the promises we keep. The tiara gleamed under crystal chandeliers, its diamonds sparkling like stars, a visual manifesto that tradition and progress could coexist. Anne, seated nearby, allowed herself a quiet, triumphant smile. In the weeks that followed, palace insiders noted a remarkable calm settle over family dynamics. Charles III privately commended his sister, acknowledging that her deft maneuver had preserved both unity and continuity. Camilla, though still queen consort, had adapted her public persona, speaking often of heritage and respect, subtly aligning herself with Anne and Catherine's narrative. Even the most skeptical aides conceded that Anne's execution of her plan had been flawless. No scandal, no spectacle, just an unassailable reclaiming of legacy. Ultimately, the execution of Anne's revenge was not about petty triumph or personal triumphalism. It was a masterclass in utilizing protocol, public opinion, and media strategy to defend a principle far greater than any individual. By the end of her campaign, the Tiara War had affirmed that in the corridors of power, the quiet conviction of one determined woman could outshine even the most glittering authority. The crown, after all, was destined for its rightful future queen, and no decree, however bold, could dim its radiance again. The palace communique landed like a lightning strike. Queen Elizabeth's St. Edward's lace tiara, reserved for Catherine, Princess of Wales. In the hush that followed, the world seemed to hold its breath, then exploded. Social media ignited within minutes. Twitter feeds flooded with #BravoAnne and #Catherine's Crown, while Royal Watch threads buzzed with split-screen gifs of Catherine pre-ban and triumphant in her restored tiara. One viral tweet read, "Heritage secured, legacy preserved. Anne is the royalty we need." Instagram stories replayed Catherine's Edinburgh banquet toast in slow motion, the tiara's diamonds, catching every chandelier, glint as she vowed to honor promises. News outlets whipped into a frenzy. The BBC ran a banner headline, "Queen's Daughter Prevails in Tiara Showdown," while the Telegraph published an op-ed titled "Tradition Versus Trend, Why Anne's Victory Matters." International papers from the New York Times to the Sydney Morning Herald noted the broader stakes, a monarchy grappling with modernity's demands, yet anchored by unbroken legacy. Editorial cartoons depicted a lone tiara shining atop the Union Jack, a beacon of continuity. Within Buckingham and Clarence House courtiers whispered of transformed alliances. Charles III, often caught between his wife's vision and his sister's protocol, breathed easier. Insiders say he spent an entire afternoon personally thanking Anne, clasping her hands in a gesture of familial solidarity. William, eyes bright with relief, privately told his aunt, "You've saved more than a crown. You've saved my family's story." His words resonated like a benediction. Camilla's camp recalibrated swiftly. At a private gathering that evening, aides overheard Camilla quietly commending Catherine's elegance in restoring the tiara and subtly shifting her own public messaging toward heritage and respect. The Queen Consort's next address referenced the timeless importance of our traditions, a marked departure from her earlier focus on minimalism. Even the palace's style bureau prepared new headpieces sparingly jeweled in deference to the restored protocol. In Westminster, historians and cultural commentators weighed in. A broadcast historian noted, "This episode proves that symbols matter, especially when they embody decades of duty." A sociologist highlighted the public's emotional investment. People saw themselves in this struggle, an underdog, fighting to reclaim what was promised a universal tale of respect for commitments. Podcasts dedicated entire episodes to debating whether modernizing reforms should ever override a predecessor's clear wishes. Back in Wales, local charities reported an uptick in donations to Catherine's initiatives. Supporters inspired by her Heritage Heirloom project pledged funds to digitize royal archives. One donor confessed, "Seeing Catherine fight for something so pure made me want to contribute to preserving history." The project's website traffic spiked tenfold, a testament to the power of combining tradition with innovation. For Anne, The victory felt deeply personal. In the solitude of her private apartments, she allowed herself a rare smile as she admired a miniature replica of the tiara displayed on her writing desk. Her shoulders, once tense with battle-weary resolve, relaxed. She had defended her mother's final wishes, and in doing so, reasserted that in the corridors of power, quiet conviction can outshine the loudest decree. Ultimately, the Tiara War became more than palace intrigue. It crystallized a fundamental truth: legacies survive not through whim, but through unwavering guardianship. Catherine's restored crown stands as a symbol of that promise, a diamond-studded covenant linking past, present, and future. And as the palace settles back into routine, one thing remains clear when history speaks: the true heirs must listen.